Greetings! Welcome to the Devlog for hot dogs, horseshoes, and hand grenades. We're going to start off as always with a quick sound check. Make sure speakers aren't up too high. Come on, get it! There we go. Wonderful. So what have we got for you this week? Well, as any of you who have, been paying attention to news this past week, it has been a bit of a rough one being a game developer, especially game developer using the Unity engine, which of course H3 is built in. I'll be talking about a bunch of stuff related to that after we take a look at a couple new things that I have gotten working this week, as I've been barraged by questions about, like, what's going on? Does this affect H3? Does this affect me? And so I'll be talking about all of that after we take a look at a couple other cool exploding things. So, exploding thing number one, I have been working on more of our constructs for the new take and hold level, and have actually ended up making just about the most complicated one yet. Should I show that? Yeah, we will back up. This floating test sphere here is actually a perceptible entity for our AI. So when I spawn this entity, hopefully it should fire at that sphere instead of me, but you never know. It probably doesn't like me very much at the moment. So this is the iris, which immediately goes into a firing mode there. Ooh, and its laser completely takes out that plinth. So yeah, so this is a passive entity insofar as it doesn't move around. It is a sort of omnidirectional turret which charges up a beam laser that functions the same way. I keep expecting it to fire at me. That functions the same way as our laser pistol, which means that can actually bounce. I'm gonna let it fire one more time. Oop, took out a box there. Go fast, tools and toys. No, melee, shields. Yes. Cool. And as you can see here, because it uses the beam laser, reflects, just like our laser pistol. So with a metal thing, it's still thinking that's more dangerous than me because I'm not armed. Playing with that is so much fun. What took so long with this, what's been so difficult about this entity, is that this isn't just a fancy animation, these are all live physics objects. And so I can push that around, I can manipulate it while it's transforming, while it's firing. This did a bunch of damage to it, because this is a melee weapon. That's cool. Let's take a couple shots at it. As you can see, the pieces of it jerk around when struck. Oh, it thinks it's mad at me now. It is fairly resistant to gunfire. This is an entity that I don't really expect that you should be directly attacking most of the time, but should instead mainly be avoiding or using another tool to destroy. Oh. It's actually probably far too durable at the moment to gunfire. I'm still deciding how I want it to work. Yeah, way too durable against pistol weapons. Safety shield, go. Let's grab something way more durable. Or powerful, I should say. Don't shoot at me! Okay, good. There we go. Looks like a ricochet hit something over there. Wonderful. So yeah, so that is our iris. Still tuning it, but it, as I said, it took quite a while to make work, as I had to I built it first based upon how it looked and how I wanted the transformation to work, and was like, this looks cool, but it didn't interact with physics. And then I got it working with physics, but then a bunch of the transformation stuff didn't work, and I was like, I need to build this again. So it was try number 4 that actually got all of the behavior that I wanted out of it, and I'm super happy. As you can see here, we actually have mostly destroyed. These are the new destructible crates that are going into taking hold. These will probably replace both the existing ones that are just sort of built into the game and be present in the new level. Stefan made these, and part of the reason, and then I did the like futzy modeling for the destruction. Part of the reason I want to do this is that the old take and hold crates were built before I really knew how to make really optimized destructibles and step around a bunch of the things that can glitch out with them. And so these don't have a bunch of problems that the existing boxes do. And it should hopefully fix the problem where sometimes you will shoot one of these, a token will come out, and then it will like fall beneath the world or something like that. So yeah, so that is in progress and going in there. Blammo. So that needs some more dust or something like that to come out when these get destroyed. So yeah, so that is that. And then one other touch. Let me jump over to a different level quick. We are over in the actual institution scene that I'm working on, the full level. It doesn't just, in case you look at this and it's a little chuggy, it's because this is still very much in progress. It's not optimized at all. I don't have any occlusion culling, so even when I like look around the level like this, I think nothing is being efficiently culled. All the reflection probes are active. So, ooh, yeah, we are in reprojection. But despite our lagginess, I did want to show one of the new hit reactions that's going in. There's a couple of these that I'm working on, but all of our hot doggy pipes in this area now have can now fire off little bursts of steam when struck, like so. And this effect is actually built directly into the FX Manager. It not only spawns that cool visual effect, but the little gust of steam actually does a little bit of stunning damage. I'm still exactly working that out. The entire idea by having this effect is like if there's, say, an enemy coming around the corner or something like that, and you want to get a particular sort of takedown or just have a weak caliber weapon, you can just spray the pipe like that, knock them down, and then take them out, or something along that lines. So yeah, and this will, because of the fact that this is a sort of a generic component, this could technically be added to anything else. So in future levels, if I have any sort of steam pipes, it's now trivially to add this. And if you're a mod map maker, this is the simplest thing on the planet to actually add because it's built directly into the FX Manager. You can just drop a script component on this. I don't even think there's anything public to configure about it, and it can just inherit this behavior. So, and as I said, there's a couple more things along this line that I'm going to be adding, probably little like electrical arcs coming off of lights and things like that. I just want to have that, you know, ImSimmy vibe to as many things in the game as possible so that when you shoot them, something fun, something interesting can happen and we can get cross interaction between various sorts of entities. So yeah, well, that is what I have to show you in terms of progress with the level. I've been mainly working on new rooms for this level, as well as watching a bunch of my industry burn to the ground this week. So if you're curious about that and what's going on with Unity, I will now jump into a mild diatribe. Yo! So what's going on with Unity? This is, as I said, this has been quite a week. It's been a pretty terrible one. And the reason for that has to do with the fact that Unity dropped on all of us who use the engine a couple days ago a new fee structure that is going into place at the end of the year, that in multiple tiers between, you know, free and pro and things like that, the various licensing tiers of the engine, adds new thresholds based upon the amount of revenue you bring in a 12-month period and the number of installs of your game lifetime, that once you cross that threshold, you start paying a new fee to Unity per installation of the application. And if you're like, what? That sounds a little bit weird. Yeah, that's how we're all feeling. And there was a whole bunch of negative, explosive reaction to this, which they went ahead and clarified, and you'll understand why this clarification isn't great in a second. that, like, reinstalling an app doesn't count. Demos don't count in certain cases. Updates don't count. But unique devices do, apparently. So that means that you're a developer, you release a Unity game, someone buys it and, puts it on their PC and then puts it on a laptop and then later puts it on a Steam Deck. That's 3 installs. That's 3 fee allocations towards that. That's 3 installs that count towards that threshold, past which you are paying Unity per install, despite the fact that the user has only purchased that application once. And that's if that makes you go like, that's only the start of that. The thing is also, they also masked, with all of this happening, they also nuked their middle tier of licensing costs for the engine. The way Unity works is there's a free version, which has a certain revenue cap where if your game makes past a certain amount, you have to upgrade to Pro. There's Unity Plus or Unity Pro. Unity Plus has always been kind of this in the middle cost that is really good for developers who are just beyond that revenue limit for Unity Free, but aren't at the point where they really have the free cash flow to spend on Pro licenses per seat. And Unity decided to nuke that with 0 days notice, although apparently anyone who's already subscribed to it can get like 1 year grace period of paying what they did for Plus before having to be forcibly upgraded to Pro if they want to keep all of that. So that also stinks. But so the big question is like, okay, that's, it's okay. They're charging more. What's the big deal? Why does this matter? So the big things about this that matter is that they have the most important thing about this change is that it is fundamentally retroactive. They're not charging you based on installs or sales that have already happened, but because they're using the term lifetime here, if I released a video game on Unity 4 years ago, let's say, all of those lifetime installs since that time to now apparently count in this schema. And more to the point, even if I released that game 4 years ago using an older version of Unity and agreed to the terms of service at that time for the engine, according to them currently, I am bound by the way this now works. And this brings us to the sort of second scummy thing they've done here, which is that Unity had several years back, I think due to the last kerfluffle that happened over terms of service, had made this whole big show about like, we're going to put our terms of service up on GitHub so you can track anything that changes about it. We'll let you know when that happens because we're trustworthy people and transparent. And they specifically had language in that terms of service that said, if something about this terms of service changes that negatively impacts you, you can continue using the older version of the terms of service associated with the version of Unity you used to make the game. And then Unity apparently months ago, without anyone noticing, just kind of deleted that GitHub or hid it and deleted that language all off of the internet. So, pretty shifty in and of itself with that. And so it's like, okay, cool. So they're doing some things like corporations stink. We all know this. So why is this as cataclysmic? Why are people reacting with the strength of this? Especially because as Unity tries to drive, like, oh, this is only affecting the sort of top group, the sort of super successful band of developers. And it comes down to trust. Basically what they have now, the Pandora's box that they have opened with all of this is saying you can select Unity as an engine, you can agree to a terms of service, you can plan your game out financially, what it's going to cost you to make it, what it's going to cost to bring it to market, and do all of that. Do a great job, succeed, bring your game to market, and they can change the terms of that agreement after the fact and add new costs that you by definition couldn't anticipate. And they can do this at will. And this is terrifying because of the fact that like video games take a long time to make. Like H3's been being worked on now for, 7.5 years. And part of that's because it's sort of like an eternal passion project kind of thing. But there are many, many games that like have 5 to 7 year development windows for complex simulation driven games are not uncommon. And so the way that you mitigate risk and get through that long process without running out of money is having software partners that you can trust and having estimations of cost through that process that you can count on. And what Unity has done in this moment is sort of said, one, you can't trust us not to just change things at any given moment, which means you can no longer count on how much it's going to cost for you to bring your game to market at the end of the day. And this ends up having a bunch of second order effects that are just as bad. So the other thing about this, the part that, to sort of rewind and talk about that whole, like, we're going to charge you for installs thing, is that a lot of people rightly were like, wait a minute, does every Unity game phone home and say, hey, I've been installed on this device? I would assume not. Some people are trying to actually figure that out now and see if the Unity app telemetry is sending something home, but I haven't seen examples of this. And Unity has basically said, we're using a proprietary data model to determine how many installs you've had. So if you're not familiar with this, this is the sort of thing that you hear out of modern tech companies that have become like AI brained. Which is the idea that with enough data, you can just extrapolate the truth about anything. And so it appears to basically mean in this case that Unity is just going to guess how many installs you've had for your game based upon the data they can acquire and just charge you based on that. So as if it wasn't bad enough that they're adding this new fee, that they're charging you based on a number they're making up, that they can't really explain to you how they're coming up with that number because it's probably coming out of some sort of machine learning system, and you can't audit it because you don't have that piece of information. No one does, because you can't pervasively track users like that. You're not like, especially with like GDPR and such, you can't track that information about users. So doubly bad. And they're just, and it makes, as a developer, it makes you feel kind of a little bit crazy dealing with something like this, that this sort of thing is presented as like, clearly this is okay. And you're being like, oh yeah, we'll just give you the number. You trust us, right? And we're all like, I mean, clearly not at this point. What are you smoking? So yeah, the installs thing is a problem. And like, let's step even back from that. Let's imagine for a moment that in a way that was somehow totally legal and totally effective, they had a perfect number of installations for an application. This would still be a problem, because what it's essentially saying is that past a point of success for a Unity app, for a Unity game, there's now an unbounded theoretical cost. Meaning that a user pays for a single thing once, and they can now, over the lifetime of owning that game, install it on as many unique devices as they want. Like, even if you think about, like, take your favorite game that you have on Steam that you've owned for a decade or something like that. How many different devices have you installed that game on? Many of us swap around computers. Some of us install games on our computer and it went on the family computer, or other sorts of places that it's been. We temporarily installed it on one, at school. That's part of what makes Steam great, is that the game is tied to the account. It's not tied to unique installations on devices. Now, all of a sudden, assuming that those installations are tracked accurately, as a developer, I'm being charged money for user behavior that I can't track, I can't control, and is totally normal. It's not a thing that I even want to restrict as a developer. I don't want to be like, here, you can install this on one computer, and then after that, you have to pay me more money. That's ridiculous. That's something that we sort of like intentionally left behind, and Unity is sort of forcibly trying to roll back the clock on, because I really just don't know. And this video is not about trying to speculate as to why they're doing any of those things, because I don't think that's actually productive in this case. But yeah, so then, to make this more concrete, so how does this impact H3? So thankfully, I guess, it doesn't really impact us personally directly with the game that much because, I mean, you can see what the state of PC VR is. Its stuff is not exactly flying off the shelves right now. If there ends up being an explosive sales wave when the Quest 3 comes out, that could possibly move us across a threshold where that would matter. And in which case, I mean, that would be a great problem to have for someone like us who is a traditional developer selling a $20 indie game. For folks like us, though, like the damage, the problem of this is way more systemic, which is that if this continues to go through, if they don't backtrack on this, culturally, Unity is a dead engine as of this week. Whatever sort of like embers of the original supportive and trustworthy vibe that Unity had, despite all of the mismanagement of the engine the past 5 years, the ridiculous things their CEO has said, those final embers are pretty much in the process of being stomped out this week. And it's, as much as I have this sort of glib smile on my face right now because it just feels absurd, it's genuinely crushing. And the effect that this is going to have on that community, you have everything from publishers to other seasoned developers basically saying things to the effect of like, I'm done with Unity. You shouldn't use Unity either unless you're absolutely stuck with this engine. Find another tool set, find a software partner that you can trust, because we can't trust Unity anymore. It's going to make a lot of publishers want to shy away from Unity games because publishers by their nature are fishing for hits more often than not. Like they, invest in, it's a standard thing. Like they invest in 10 to 20 things, hoping that, about 50% of them or 30% of them meet their costs and are profitable. And then 1 out of 10 or 1 out of 20 is this explosive success. And now Unity has been like, we're going to need a per install tax on that explosive success. And so publishers are going to want to look at games made in other engines that don't have that compared to Unity, where once again, as I said, it's an unbounded cost, and Unity has basically said they're going to charge the person they're going to go collecting that from is how the game is being distributed. So I assume that's going to be a mobile store on mobile, but then on PC, is that the publisher? Is that Steam? It isn't even clear. So yeah, in case you haven't noticed, they've also done a truly terrible job at communicating all of this, which is where a ton of the anxiety comes from, is that with a whole bunch of these terms and a whole bunch of this situation, we actually don't even know how bad it is. And it's in a constant state of flux. Game Pass deals similarly, like you think about, you subscribe to Game Pass, that whole model makes sense because they're essentially, cutting a deal with a game developer to have that game available to everyone who subscribes to Game Pass. So suddenly now, if you get a Game Pass deal for a Unity game, you're going to blow out that install limit for those limits pretty much instantaneously. So all of a sudden, is Microsoft not going to want Unity games for Game Pass now, or are the terms going to be worse? These are all of the sort of existential fears that are going to play into people's decision on what engine to use. And if you put those all together, that's how you get a community that implodes. That's how, when people cease to feel that it is worth it as an indie developer to invest in a technology stack, invest in learning a medium. Like I started learning Unity back in Unity 2.0. Like most of my professional life has been tied to this engine. And it has taken I'm still this many years in learning new things. This is a difficult discipline. You will never run out of new things to learn. And so it's incredibly demoralizing to be like, that thing that I invested that much of, a substantive part of my life as a human on this planet is now on fire. And in the best case, even if they walk this past, it's probably past its peak. It's past its prime. And people are going to feel differently about it from now on, and in terms of how this affects all of you, even more directly, the thing to think about is that like the one thing I will speculate about Unity is that this is very much in line with their stated philosophy about what they think people in the games business should be doing to make money. There's a great quote from their CEO, John R., talking about, calling indie developers, saying that they're oftentimes franking idiots for not monetizing their games more. This is the man who wanted, by the way, years ago while at EA, to sell you bullets in the game that you were playing. I don't know if that story is apocryphal or not, but the meme definitely goes around, and it fits here that this set of decisions stems from a worldview where what a game is as a money-making object is this thing that monetizes every aspect of your interaction with it, has secondary opportunities for you to spend money in it at every possible opportunity. And so if these sorts of changes get their way, if this becomes further the trend in gaming, you should expect to see this sort of thing more and more in games to survive. And it certainly is the case that if someone's a Unity developer and they have an explosive success, there's now this messed up secondary pressure, even if they were originally planning to not monetize the game past an initial purchase. Well, now we're past this threshold. Now we're paying this extra per install fee. They now have a incentive to try to recoup that via secondary monetization. And while that fits for certain kinds of experiences that we all love, it doesn't fit for a lot of other games. And the world is worse off if the only types of games that can succeed and thrive are ones that monetize secondary purchases. That makes us all worse off. It narrows the possibility space of what games can be as a medium. And I bet a whole lot of you would not be happy about that. Oh, exhausting. So what does one do all about this? Obviously, I don't want to just drop a bunch of doom and gloom on you and be like, it's all terrible. Bye. See y'all next week. Sort of thing. But obviously, as a consumer, there's not much that you can really do other than what you already do relative to the games and the developers and the pieces of media that you already love, which is to support them as best as you can, to play their stuff, share their stuff, be patient with indie developers when there are aspects of the business of making games that are not advantageous, especially because the fact that just the macro environment that we're all in, the recession, the difficulties that have hit tech, the fact that interest rates are no longer 0%. You look at the stuff happening with Embracer, it's going to be, despite the fact this has been an amazing year for game releases, it really looks like in a bunch of ways that we are entering a very difficult period for the business of games. And so the more that you can understand that that's what's going on at the big scale, the more that you can possibly have patience, as I said, for the folks that you want to support. And more specifically, for those of you entering creative fields, developer careers, I think there's some really important things to learn about, take from what's going on right now, which is that these large entities, Unity, Unreal, big platform distributors, Steam, all of them, these are large corporations. These are not your friends. These are not entities that you can trust like someone even if, as someone like myself, I've had wonderful working relationships with many people who've worked at Unity over the years. Those were all fantastic, talented individuals. They're passionate about what they did. Many of them helped me out over my path as a developer over the years. And all of that matters absolutely zero relative to a large corporate entity that decides to light their whole community on fire. And so it is important to always understand that all of these large entities are they're giants walking around us. They can crush you in an instant. And to just, as you're constructing your career, your passion, your discipline, to be as flexible and perhaps diversified as possible in your skill set, because seismic changes like this can happen out of nowhere, and it can be really destabilizing to your career. It can be destabilizing to any business you end up doing, and just to your creative practice. It's terrible to work on something that you love and just be like, was that all a bad idea? Do I have to think about whether that was all just, a big waste of time or not? So, but yeah, so I know this has been, as I said, a little bit of a doom and gloom thing, but I wanted to clarify because I know a lot of you, or hopefully not too many of you follow me on Twitter and have seen that I've been quite angry about this the past number of days, but this is now leaking out into the mainstream world more and more as time goes on, because it's actually that big of a deal. And it's rare that we have an entity of this size do something so catastrophically stupid and communicate it even worse. And so, but at the end of the day, those of us who work on games like this, who, will continue soldiering along. H3 isn't going anywhere because of this. It will just be, it'll just be a little demoralizing for a while. And we can all hold out hope that, they can somehow right the ship, fire the right people, and present something that is actually sane and equitable. And if they don't, I'm sure, who knows? Maybe in a couple of years, I'll just be using Godot. Anyway, I wish you all the best week and weekend, and I'll see you all next week, hopefully with some more Take and Hold goodness. Peace.